This tutorial will look at Blazor Server configuration sources. We'll look at the default sources and some additional sources, and we'll show how you set up and access these sources in Azure and/or the Blazor app. Here are the default configuration sources listed in order from highest to lowest priority. The bottom of the slide gives reasons for desiring additional sources beyond these defaults. We will consider two additional configuration sources, Azure Key Vault and Azure App Configuration. Later, it will be easy to see that Azure App Configuration and Azure App Services Configuration are two different sources. Let's create a Blazor app in Visual Studio now, and we'll discuss each of the configuration sources. For this app, we're going to choose the Blazor web app. Note that it's .NET 8 and we're specifying server for the interactive render mode. Let's close this page and get started. I paused the video so I could install these three NuGet packages. Now let's replace the home.razor page. For this tutorial, it would have been sufficient probably just to have this extra code right here to show what my secret value is really active. But I also put in some additional code here. You can look at it. It's going to display all the configuration providers. It's just kind of an interesting thing to see. Notice that it's really nice. We can inject this configuration and use it in any class or page. Let's start looking at our configuration sources one at a time. We'll start with appsettings.json. Let's add this line. We're going to use the my secret key, and we want to know where we're finding that key. So in parentheses here, I've said we're going to find this one in appsettings.development.json. Let's put another key here in this JSON file. And there's one more easy one here to do. Let's right-click here and go to Manage User Secrets, and let's add one in here. This should really be found in secrets.json. We now have the same key in three different configuration sources. So if we run this app on the home Razor page, which one is it going to pick? We looked at the priorities earlier, so let me pause the video while I get this compiled and run it, and let's see which one it chooses. Okay, well, it found it in secrets.json as we would have expected. Here's the list I showed you earlier in the home page, and they're listed from highest to lowest. So we did not put the key in any of these top two, but we did put it in secrets. So it found it before it went to look in appsettings.development or just the plain old app settings. As an experiment, let's just change our secrets.json and make it a different key. And I'll recompile this and we'll run it again, and now it won't find it here, it'll find it in the next priority source. Okay, so now it got found in appsettings.development.json because it was no longer in secrets. And again, it would just keep going down the list until it finds it. Now we're going to start adding some other configuration sources and see what we have to do in the Blazor app to actually access them. I should have mentioned that secrets.json is only going to be available when we run in Visual Studio in our development environment. Here's the next three sources we want to incorporate, and we will do them here one at a time. The first one, Azure App Services Configuration, can only be used when the Blazor app is running on the Azure portal. The other two can actually be run in development or in production, and we'll see how we do that a little bit later. And in case I forget to mention it later, these last two, if you run these in development, when you go to run your app in Visual Studio, it'll take a little while because of these two things being active before you see the page, so don't be concerned about that. Normally, you're probably not using these in a development configuration, but you might. Before we can define these other sources, we're going to have to publish our app to Azure. So let's do that very quickly. We're going to publish it to Azure. We're going to use an app service on Windows. And let me fill this in. I've got this set to use a free service plan, so let me create this. Let's click Finish and close this, and finally finish the publish. After the publish finished, it actually launched the application, and you can see here that the value of my secret is found in app settings. That, of course, is because we're on a production system and you can't use user settings, and so this is the first place that it found it. We can now go to the Azure portal to configure those, to set up those other configuration sources. Okay, I'm on Azure portal. Let's start with the easiest one, which is the Azure App Services Configuration. So here's the new web app that we just published, and let's go down here to Configuration, and we want to add a new setting here. So let's give it my secret, and let's give it a value. So this will let us know where it came from. Let's click OK, and let's save this and continue. It's updating the app settings, and now I'm going to try to run it. Now occasionally you have to wait a while for things to become active, so let me get things set up here and let's just run this on the Azure portal, on the Azure server, because we would expect it now to find it out of that new source that we just added. So I'll just click right here to run this, and you can see it is finding this in Azure App Services Configuration. Next, we're going to want to add Azure App Configuration, which is a slightly different source, even though the name is so similar. So we're going to go ahead and configure it, but let me tell you, it's not going to work until we make some changes in the Program.cs file, because it's not going to automatically look for Azure App Configuration. It's not one of the default sources. Okay, we're in the Azure portal. Let's go to App Configuration, and let's create a new one. And let me fill this in here a minute. Okay, I've named it Ken Test App Config. Let's see if it'll let us do this, and let's create it. The deployment is in progress, so let me pause and give it a chance to finish up. Okay, let's go to that resource. And right up here, this is going to be a very important thing. We're going to need to know this information when we go back and update the Blazor Server app itself. So this Ken Test App Config azconfig.io, we're going to need that later. I'm going to copy it right now and save it in Notepad because we're going to need it. Okay. So now let's go to Configuration Explorer, and let's create a new key value for us. And as usual, it's going to be my secret. And the value is going to be XYZ in Azure App Configuration. And let's apply that. Okay, if we want to see the values, we can see it set here. And like I say, we still have to update our Blazor app itself. We also might have to give it some authorization here to various things. So let's do that next. We're going to have to assign the role data owner to me. That'll help it run from Visual Studio. And data reader to the app that we publish. So let's do that right now. Let's add data owner. Next, the user, let's select, and we're going to select me and select, go to next, review and assign, and it's taking care of that. We also want to add data reader to the app, which is a managed identity. And so let's look at all of these. And the one we just added is this one right here. And so let's select it and review and assign it. And that looks good. So it got added. So let's see who has access. So now I am data owner, and this app is data reader. So the final configuration source that we want to deal with is Azure Key Vault, and that's a very good, important one. So let's do that next. Okay, we're in the Azure portal. Let's go to Key Vaults, and let's create another one. And let me fill this in a minute. So I'm going to try this name here, Ken Tutorial KV. Let's see what happens here. Let's create it. And let me pause while it gets deployed. Let's go to this resource. And we are going to need to give access, like we did earlier. We're going to have to give access to me and to the app. So I'm not going to go through all these steps, but this time we're going to give Key Vault Administrator to me, and we're going to give down here Key Vault Secrets User to the app. So let me do that a minute. Okay, I've taken care of access control. I'm administrator, and this app is a secrets user. We still need to add a secret in here, so let's go there and generate import. Let me fill this in a minute. It's interesting when you try to enter the secret, you can't see it. So I'm going to take this and copy it and paste it right here. And let's create that. And if we click here and here, we can actually see what I typed in there. This one is in the Azure Key Vault. So we are finally ready to go back to the app itself and make the changes to get these two configuration sources that are not there by default. So let me do that. And it's mostly comments. So we set configuration equals builder configuration. And then way down here, right now we're checking for is production, but that's not necessary. This will run in the development on Visual Studio, although these will take a little bit longer to load the page. But these are from some other examples that I've written a month or so ago. So we've got to put the correct values in here. So you'll remember I pasted this one earlier. So let's copy it and let's paste it right in here. And we still have to do the key vault, get the correct value for that. So let's go back and find that. So I've gone back into the portal, Azure portal. Let's click on this key vault. And here's what we want to grab right here. This is the string that we need. So I've copied it. Let me paste it into our web app. Okay, let's build this, make sure everything seems okay. It succeeded. And right now, since I've got this set to run in production, let's see what happens. I'm going to go run this on Azure, but first I have to publish it, and you've seen that before. So I'm going to quick publish it, and we'll run it on Azure Server. Okay, after I published it, Azure launched it automatically, and you can see our secret is coming from the Key Vault, which is the highest priority thing right now. If we get it out of the Key Vault, it should find it from this next one, and so on down the list. So I'm going to stop the video right here for a second, but I may just go back and start deleting this, and let's see what really happens. Okay, I'm back in Azure, and I'm going to go to Key Vaults, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to get rid of the key that's in the secrets that's in here. I'm going to get rid of that. So let's do that a minute. We'll delete it. Soft delete, that's okay. And it's been deleted. Now I'm going to run the app, but if you're doing this yourselves, you may discover you have to restart the app, which I'll show you how to do, and maybe give it a chance for things to sync up. Let me get to our app services, and this is the one right here, and we can go and restart it. Do you want to restart it? Yes. And now let's see what happened. We got rid of the value that's in the Key Vault. Let's see. It's still showing right there, so let me pause here and get things timed to sync up. I didn't make any changes. I simply shut down this browser and restarted it. I didn't do anything different except wait a little bit longer. Now you can see it's in Azure App Configuration. So let's do one more. You get the idea. I'm going to get it out of there a minute, and we'll see if it finds it in the next spot. So I'm going to App Configuration here. This is the one we did. And we're going to Configuration Explorer. And let me figure out how to get rid of this key. I selected it. We'll hit delete. You want to delete it? Yes. And now if we go back to the apps, app services, and this one here, and if I've given it enough time, let's find out. We'll run this. It's still showing to be in Azure App Configuration. So again, let me pause it and give it a little bit more time. Okay, I really had to wait a long time. I restarted the app. I had to rerun it 2 or 3 times before everything synced up. I didn't change any code or do anything else. And you can see now that the secret is being found in Azure App Services Configuration because we got rid of it out of number 2 here. And recall from a very early in this, the environment variables, this is treated like environment variables. So now it's down to that step right here to find it. So that concludes this tutorial. I hope you found it interesting and valuable. Have a good day. Bye.